Preacher 357 here. I'm out here in the shop to do an unboxing and comparison video on a gun that I've been hearing about for a long time, but had never run across one in the shop. And finally found one, and that is the SCCY CPX2 Gen 3. This is the third generation gun. And so the question is it better than the Gen 2? And, you know, I really haven't heard a lot about this gun. There's not been a lot of fanfare, not been a lot of hype about it. I remember when the CPX2 Gen 2 came out, there was a lot of hype around that gun. There was a lot of people talking about that gun. There was a lot of reviewers that were talking about it, showing it, bringing people from Sky on. I mean, it was really talked up as a made in the USA gun. And I was so intrigued by it with such a low price that I bought one myself. Here is my Gen 2 SCCY CPX2 that I bought, I think, in 2015. So 7 years ago or so, maybe a little over, that I bought this gun because I was intrigued. I found it for a really cheap price. I think I found it at a gun show for about $1.99, I think is what it was, 199 bucks. You know, I thought it was a pretty good price, so I got it just to see if I would like it or not. And to be honest, after some initial hiccups, I did like it until it started falling apart. And eventually, you know, pretty much everything in the gun had to be replaced. And, you know, for a little while there, I even carried it because it carried so well. So light, so easy to carry on the hip. It was really a nice gun in a lot of ways until it wasn't. And, of course, I did a video earlier this year, I think, where I put the M-Carbo spring kit in this one just to see if it made any difference. I never was one that disliked the trigger pull that much. I shoot a lot of double action revolver, so the double action trigger was not a bad thing to me. A lot of people hated it, but you know, I thought I would just try that out since I wasn't using the gun for anything anyway, and it was okay. You know, the light double action pull was not a big deal to me. You know, getting it light. I mean, it was still long, so it didn't really make any difference. It was a little bit lighter because my finger is used to pulling a double action trigger on a revolver anyway, so a 10-pound trigger is not that bad to me. But you know, I was getting some light primer strikes as a result with some ammo, and you know, that's what you get when you lighten your springs on a double action gun. You know, that hammer spring, that spring tension is what slams that hammer home into the firing pin and causes the primer to go off. So if you reduce the strength of the spring, you obviously run the risk of having light primer strikes. But anyway, I was curious if they fixed a lot of the issues that I was having, what they changed. And so I got the CPX2 Gen 3 here to take a look at it. And I don't know, you know, Sky has been one of those companies that seemed to be hot for a while there, and then they kind of went underground. And you know, they announced the CPX3, their 380 version, and it went years without anybody ever seeing one. And I've heard people that have them now, but I still have never seen one. I've never seen one in a shop here in West Tennessee. So I don't know anything about the CPX3 at all. So, you know, I don't know if they had some financial troubles. I don't know what happened with them, but I'm curious to see if the CPX2 Gen 3 is an improvement. You know, I was waiting on that DVG one, and I got one of those and was underwhelmed. I just really was not impressed with it. I like the trigger on the CPX2 better than that striker fire trigger on the DVG one because it was a horrible trigger. I would rather have a double action trigger than that horrible DVG1 striker fire trigger. It was just not good at all. And I couldn't get any accuracy with it even off of a rest. So I was just not pleased with that gun at all. So I'm curious. I'm rooting for Sky. I'm not anti-Sky by any means. I'm rooting for them as an American company. I'm hoping that they're able to put out a really good product for the price they're at. I think that's a good thing for the market. There's people who you know, need to be able to defend themselves who don't have a lot of money. It'd be nice if we had some firearms that were, you know, low dollar value but still high quality. And so I'm rooting for Sky. I hope this is a great gun. But I thought first we would come out here into the shop and I'd kind of compare the two and take them apart and see what the differences are. And then obviously I'm going to clean it and lube it. A lot of times I do, straight out of the box testing with the gun, just pull it out of the box and start shooting it and see what happens. I'm not going to do that with this one. I think I've had issues with every Sky right out of the box. So I am going to, before I do the range review, I'm going to clean it, I'm going to lube it, and then I'm going to shoot it a while. I'm going to put a few hundred rounds through it, make sure I've got it broke in. And then I'll do a range review and see how it does from that point forward. Because I want to give it every chance to shine. I want to give it every opportunity to show what it can do. So why don't we get over here to the cleaning table there and then take a look at these two guns side by side and see what changes they've made. One more thing, guys, before we get over here and look at these guns. If you would check out the description, I've got a link there for the Gun Owners of America, the GOA. There's a discounted link there to join up and become a member. And you can help out with our gun rights and help us preserve our constitutional rights, because they are under assault. There are those who want to take away our ability to defend ourselves. And there's also a link there for the TFA, the Tennessee Firearms Association. So if you live in Tennessee, if you live in this great state that I live in, then I would urge you to join the TFA as well and help us here in this state of Tennessee. I think we've got a lot of exciting things coming up in the next year that our legislature is going to be working on. At least that's the word I've been hearing. So I'm hoping to see some real movement toward a true constitutional carry type of situation where we fully get our rights restored back to us here in Tennessee. So guys, if you would check out the description there, click on those links and help us out in our fight to restore our constitutional freedoms. All right, we got them both out here on the cleaning table now. We can kind of see the differences, the things that stand out first and foremost. Obviously, they have gotten rid of the finger grooves. So they pulled a Glock on us, right? Glock had the finger grooves and then got rid of them. Well, they didn't have them in the Gen 1, Gen 2, then Gen 3, Gen 4 had finger grooves, and then Gen 5 didn't. So they went away from the finger grooves here with a little bit of a sort of a texturing there, not much of a texturing on the front strap there. They could have done better with that, I believe. And this would be a pretty good candidate for Talon grips, I can go ahead and tell you, because the texturing on the side is no better than the original. It's pretty much identical, which is more for looks than it is for anything. Another thing you see here is these holes in the back, and I don't even remember what they called this. They hyped this up as being some sort of recoil mitigation type of thing where it cushioned the recoil, but I think everybody realized and they agree that it was more for looks than anything, that it didn't really do much. So they've just gotten rid of that completely now. And the other thing you can see is the grip is a lot more streamlined. It is not nearly as wide and thick. And I think some people didn't like the grips on them because they were too wide for some people's hands. I mean, I've got a pretty big hand. I'm not a small guy. Well, I've got stubby fingers, but I do have a fairly big palm, and I don't have any trouble with it. It's pretty comfortable to me. It fits just about right for me. But I can tell I've got a little bit more room on this, a little more to play with. But it's not necessarily better or worse. The finger grooves fit me fairly well, so that was never an issue. So I can take one or the other. It doesn't really make much difference to me as far as the grips go. Obviously, another thing here is this one kind of was contoured down here with this. I don't know if that was supposed to be some sort of proprietary type of rail system. Probably something that they were going to put a light on. I don't know that you could buy a light that would hook onto that, maybe. I don't know. But they went away from that into an actual Picatinny style, 1913 style rail there with the two slots. And so I think that's definitely an improvement, though. I don't know how many people actually put lights or anything on a small gun like this, but maybe a laser or something would fit there. but it's good to have it. There's no problem in having it there, so that's a benefit. Other than that, the other thing I noticed is the triggers look very, very similar. It doesn't look like they've really changed the contour of the trigger at all, but I think you can see that the reset is different. And I don't know if that's just the gun that I've got, or if all of them are like this, but the reset on this one is not as far forward. So I think they have shortened the trigger stroke. They've shortened the distance of the pull, because this one, to reset, had to come all the way out here, whereas this one is further back. It's not a lot further back, but you know, every little bit's going to make a difference. And I pulled the trigger on this, and I have to admit, for a double action trigger, it did not feel bad at all. It didn't feel very heavy to me. I mean, you know, probably 8 or 9 pounds. I wish I had a trigger gauge, but I don't have a trigger weight gauge. But it didn't feel all that heavy. I've got revolvers that are definitely heavier than this. And it had a fairly crisp break to it, which the original didn't. So it feels like they changed something. The triggers don't feel the same. Of course, I've got the M-Carbo springs in here, so this one's extremely light compared to this one. But I don't know that I really liked the lightness of it that much. It didn't really make it more appealing to me at all. But that's the things I see on the outside. Beyond that, the contouring and the styling, this is flat on top, much like we saw with the DVG one. Whereas this one had the ridge on top here, and then the tiny flat spot on the top there, but you know, it's contoured down on the sides. And this is just flat all the way across the top, which I think I like better. I think that's better in the way it looks, which also allows to have a wider rear sight. The rear sight on the original the CPX2 Gen 2 here, not the original. The Gen 2 here was a really skinny, if you can see how skinny that is there, across the top there, rear sight. And that's because of this arch on top of the slide. But now with it being flat, they've been able to put a wider rear sight on there, much like what you saw with the DVG one. And I think that's an improvement. The sights are better this way. Now, how that translates into shooting, I don't know. We haven't got out to the range yet. Probably a few days before I get out there with it. But that's really what I'm seeing so far. And looks like the takedown systems are the same. Looks like it's got the frame pins in the same spot. Looks like it's got the same kind of mainspring there that hooks in the bottom right here. So from what I can see from the outside, a lot of it is just cosmetic. With the exception of the trigger reset being not as far forward. So what we need to do now is we just need to pull these apart and examine the inside and examine the slides and the action and see if they've made any other changes. I'm wondering about the extractor as well, because the DVG1 had a different extractor to it, which whether it's a benefit or not, I don't know, because it fell out of the DVG1 while I was shooting. So obviously you don't want your extractor, I'm sorry, not your extractor, your ejector. I'm saying the wrong thing. I'm wondering if they changed the ejector. I had the ejector fall out of the DVG1 while I was shooting it. And you don't want that to happen, obviously. But the ejector on my CPX2 here, Gen 2, broke. So which is worse, that it falls out, but it's held in place by a set screw and you can put it back in like the DVG1 was, or for it to break and you have to get it replaced like the CPX2 was. So I'm wondering if the Gen 3 here, if they've went to that set screw style of ejector. But the only way to find out is to pull it apart. Also, I want to show that these have magazine compatibility. These are both brand new magazines. And you can see they fit in, lock in. So they really haven't changed the magazine. So if you have the original magazines, they will work in the Gen 3s as well. They have not changed that at all. So the magazines are the same. Try to keep the two separate so I don't mix the parts up. Those look pretty much the same. I don't see a lot of difference there. All right, let's take a look here. Looks like the slide rails here, the rails on the frame here for the slide are a little bit longer. So that's maybe an improvement. But they're a little bit longer. But other than that, I don't see a lot of difference between them. Very similar. The ejector on this one, on the new model, the Gen 3 here, looks like it might be a tad bit thicker. And whereas this one's really flat on the end, this one's kind of rounded. So they changed the contour of the front and made it a little bit thicker, but it's not held in with a set screw the same way that the DVG1 was. So I was wondering if they would do that, but it's not. It's still basically the same style of ejector as the Gen 2 is. Now obviously you see these supports that it has in here are not there on the Gen 3 here. And that probably has something to do with the Picatinny rail under there versus not having one here. Maybe that adds the support here as it is, the way they've got it, that it doesn't need the ribs in there for support. I don't know. It may not have done anything to begin with, so. But they look a lot alike. I'd be willing to bet you could pull the action out of one of these and stick it in the other one. I would be willing to bet that. I'm not going to try it, but they look similar enough that I believe that they'll swap out with one another. So looking at the frames, I'm not seeing a lot of difference between them. And I'm not going to pull the action out and then examine anything else. I'll try to do a little research and find out about the return spring, trigger return spring, or anything like that they might have changed, but I'm not planning on taking it apart. If I find something significant, maybe I will and do a follow-up and show you the difference, but let's go to the slides now. So just looking at the slides with the barrel still in, I can see one big difference is they've changed the lockup on the barrels here, the lugs. Let's take these out. This is captive, but I believe this one was at one time captive and it just broke. I'm pretty sure it was. So I'm betting this would probably end up doing the same thing at some point, but that was originally captive as well. Let's pull the barrels out here. All right, and we can see this one is enclosed and that one is open. So I'm not sure what difference that makes. Obviously this one has like a contour here at the front and this one does not. So, you know, this one is like the DVG1. The DVG1 was like this as well, I believe. So they've changed the way they've done the barrels on them. Hopefully that doesn't translate to worse accuracy, because that DVG1 was not accurate. And I'm not saying that I'm the greatest shot in the world, but when I can't even put a decent group together on a rest, something's wrong. So hopefully this barrel is not inaccurate, because it is a lot like that DVG1. So they made a few changes. Just looking at the inside of the slide here, I mean, it's very, very similar. The one thing I do see here, the front sight, the pinning on it, looks like it's set up for a Glock tool, a Glock front sight tool. This one was not. This one looks like it was probably just glued in. If just looking at it, I'm surprised it hadn't come out, but it looks like it was just glued in. Whereas this one has the was it a hexagon or a 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, whatever that is. I think it's a hexagon. I mean, I was a math major, through my junior year, but that was a long time ago. But anyway, it's got that Glock tool style of front sight on it. But other than that, practically the same. I don't see a lot of difference at all. So I would bet that you could just swap the slides out and that they would work with the other frame. Let's just see if they'll fit together. I'm betting they will. The only thing is, with a different lockup, I don't know, but I'm betting it will, but let's see. Well, I may be wrong. Looks like it will not. And it may be because of that different barrel. Yep, that one's not going on there. So that may be at least a little bit of a change there that they've made. If they're not interchangeable. This one's not either. So there are some changes that were made that are significant because they will not interchange. The slides will not with the frames. But there you go. There's the difference, and not a lot of difference, but there are some differences. Question is, how's that translate into shooting? And I don't know that yet, but we're going to find out, and I promise you I'll make a video and show you. So guys, I appreciate you coming out. God bless you. Y'all take care of yourselves, and we'll see you next time with this gun out on the range. Y'all take care.